on the video and no one else. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Kevin Harrington. I'm the principal here at Cottage High School. And with us this evening, I'm the least important employee in the room or in the virtual room this evening. So with us this evening is Vicki Evans, the senior counselor, senior and freshman. So if you have freshmen as well, she's your counselor. And then 10th and 11th grade counselor this year is Rex Basting. So he's here with us this evening. And then Lacey Guest with our College and Career Center is here as well. And they'll be going over the information this evening. So with that, I will turn it over to them and we'll get going.
Okay, so while I am presenting and talking, I have to put it in the smaller mode just due to like some technology difficulties. So hi everybody, I'm Lacey. I'm the College and Career Coordinator, and I am the one working primarily with Vicki this year for your senior class, for our senior class. So I'm going to go over the first few slides, and then we're going to play like magical chairs to keep it interesting, because I know financial aid isn't what everyone finds super exciting to talk about, but we'll try to keep you guys interested by hopping around in terms of presenters. If you guys have questions, just drop them in the chat and we'll try to answer them as we're going. Okay, so in terms of post-high school plans in general, there are so many different avenues that kids can take after graduation. Often the most popular choices are community college, four-year college, trade schools or apprenticeship programs, military or workforce tend to be kind of our top 5 groups. And all of those things have something in common, and those things all you have to apply for. You can't just join the military, you can't just go to a community college, you can't just go to a four-year college or a trade school. Kids have to apply for them, and that does take some planning. And so right now we understand that students might not know for sure what they want to do, and that's totally fine. They've got some time to figure it out still. What we want from them, though, is to come up with some tentative plans so that they have their options open. So we hope that they take advantage of the different research platforms that we have, including CIS, and I understand parents might not know what that is, but your kiddo should know what it is. They've been using it for the last 4 years. It's Career Information Systems, and it just will help them do some research, and we will use it in senior seminar class this year. I run the Career Center, and we have all sorts of opportunities typically throughout the school year. This year's going to look a little different. Most of these opportunities are now virtual, but all of that information is in there. Google Classroom for senior seminar and on the website, and there's all sorts of live tours of different industries and college campuses. I have military folks coming to chat with students, as well as admissions counselors from colleges chatting with students and giving presentations. So just keeping these things in mind as good research mechanisms for your student to figure out what might be a good fit for them after high school. And we just ask that they kind of keep track of everything they've done, because all of their experiences, whether they're volunteer work, clubs, athletics, part-time jobs, any extracurriculars at all, keep track of everything that they've done, because as they're doing this research, they might find some relevant experiences to put on a resume or an activity chart as they fill out all of these applications that are going to be required for their post-high school plans. All right. Okay. So with a few exceptions, financial aid will be probably a household term for the next year or so with your senior. Financial aid is, I like to refer to it as an umbrella term. I actually have like a little graphic. It's an umbrella term for all of the different ways that we pay for college. And by college, I mean any kind of post-secondary education. So you can use financial aid for trade schools, for apprenticeship programs, for community colleges, for certificate programs, and for four-year universities as well. So financial aid is just that catch-all term for all the different ways we pay for all of these different types of school. And this includes several different things. And I won't go into every single facet of financial aid, but there are several things that are what I like to tell students, free money. I make them repeat it back to me, free money. There are free money options out there for students. I know a lot of parents are always really hesitant to talk about financial aid because loans are something that a lot of us don't want these kids to have to take out. And so we do treat that as kind of like a last resort option. And we will work with your kids through the whole financial aid process and try to get as much of that free money first before we talk about loans. And if you guys have specific questions about any of that, you can definitely reach out to us individually. Okay. Kind of the very first step in accessing any kind of financial aid is going to be filling out the FAFSA or the ORSA. And you'll hear these used all smashed together, FAFSA, ORSA, like our acronyms in financial aid. The FAFSA, many of you may have heard of. It's the free application for federal student aid. Many of you may have filled it out yourselves or worked with older students to fill it out. And if you haven't, just know that it is free. It is the free application for federal student aid. And it's really not as terrifying as you might expect. It is open on October 1st each year. So students were officially able to fill it out starting October 1st. And the FAFSA, just to clarify, is the application that is federal, and that's the one for students who are U.S. citizens. And then the ORSA is the Oregon Student Aid Application, and that application is usually for students who are immigrants or who may not be full citizens quite yet. So you only are going to fill out one or the other. No one is ever going to fill out both. So if your student has a social security card with a social security number on it, the FAFSA is what you'll be filling out. But you'll hear us say FAFSA/ORSA because some kids fill out one, some kids fill out the other. Both open on October 1st and both require the same information. So you're going to use your 2019 tax data. I like to think of the FAFSA and the ORSA as like a giant calculator. So you input all sorts of information. The student tells the FAFSA all of their information. The parent goes in and lists a bunch of information, everything about your family, your finances. It gets really nosy. It's a very nosy calculator. And you put all of this information in here. And generally, it just kind of spits out some information that will be useful to colleges and universities and then scholarship applications later. So this is just kind of the first step. What I do want to mention is that the IRS data retrieval tool will be found kind of at the bottom of the first parent section. Like when you start seeing questions about finances, you'll see a little button down at the bottom that just says link to IRS. This is a really great tool. It's just the IRS website kind of built into the FAFSA. So it can connect to your tax returns from the 2019 year and autofill a lot of that tedious tax information that you otherwise would have to like copy it in. It saves you some time and effort. If it doesn't work out to use the data retrieval tool, you're really just typing in numbers and it tells you exactly what line of your tax return to use. Either way, we're happy to help you guys with that. So if you guys have any questions about any portion of the FAFSA or ORSA, do let us know. And let's see. We will have a couple of FAFSA help nights coming up, and we'll talk about those and mention those in the chat for the link to sign up for those as well if you guys want some individual help. All right. Often, this is a question that you will want to ask one-on-one. Students, no one's family looks the same and no one's financial situation looks the same. And so figuring out who is a parent on the FAFSA is sometimes a trickier question for some than it is for others. Whether your students' parents live together or apart, whether they are officially separated, divorced, never married, if there's a single parent, an adoptive parent, someone who is a legal guardian, someone who is not a legal guardian appointed by the courts, any of these situations, there is a way to fill out the FAFSA. So the FAFSA can bend to any kid's unique family situation. And so figuring out who is the parent and whose financial information to include on the FAFSA There's all sorts of different like charts and questions you can find online, and this is an example of one of them. But if you guys do have any really specific questions or need to know a little bit more about exactly whose financial information to include on the FAFSA, do let us know. We're happy to try to help you guys navigate that. It's usually something that we can figure out pretty quickly together, but we just want to make sure you guys are including the right information. All right. Were there any questions in the chat or anything, Vicki? No? Okay. Then I will musical chairs it over to you.
Alrighty. So part of the FAFSA, once it is sent off to, once you submit the FAFSA, that information is going to go to the schools that you put in. And you can put in really as many schools as you like and then make some changes as you go. Most parents and students are going to put between maybe 4 and 6 schools, but it's actually the school that decides the amount of money that students get. Sometimes it's a little bit confusing and people think that FAFSA is an entity that gives the money. FAFSA is just the kind of the housing place for where the numbers are crunched and they're given to the schools, and then the schools decide how much money each student is going to receive. So this is just an example. Once you complete the FAFSA, in our next slide, we won't go there yet, but the next slide is going to talk about how you will see what your estimated family contribution is. An example of this would be, let's just say tuition at U of O is $10,000. FAFSA might then look at the parent-student estimated family contribution is $2,000. What you would need to provide, and then your amount of need is $8,000. Now this can get a little bit tricky because sometimes an EFC could be anywhere from $0 up to $20,000, but parents may not be able to contribute that much. It's kind of a ballpark, and it's something that you'll work with that college on once you see what your EFC is. So there's 2 ways for you to, once you have that EFC, to see how much money you're going to receive. One is using the FAFSA forecaster, which is listed down here below. You can do that at any time. You can go on to FAFSA forecaster, it's a tongue twister, and it's going to ask the same information as the FAFSA, and it's going to give you a general idea what your EFC is going to be. The other piece of this is once you submit your FAFSA and your FAFSA ID, I'm going to talk about that in just a second, it will actually give you your EFC. And that's the one number that you're going to kind of hang on to. Let's go back to the FSA ID a second. Your FSA ID is your signature. So it's a way for you to submit your FAFSA saying all of that information is accurate and true. And in order to create that, you do have to go onto this link, put in your username, create a username and password, have an email, have a correct social security number. You will need one FSA ID, and your student will also need their own FSA ID. So I went over it with all the kids this week in senior seminar, showed them a little video. It's only 4 sections of questions, so it's not difficult, but please make sure your student is sitting down with their little blue card, because their name and their social security card have to match exactly. Especially, it could get tricky when kids have a hyphenated last name, or maybe they've been going by a nickname all through school. We need to make sure it's exactly what's on their social security. And I've already said that like 3 times, but I can't stress that enough. If you put it in wrong, it's really, really hard to undo. So if you would get your FSA ID soon and have your student get theirs, then when you're ready to do your FAFSA, it's real simple. That's just the last thing that you do. Okay, Lacey, will you go to the next slide? So the process is you get your FSA ID, you fill out your FAFSA, you're going to sign it with your FSA ID, you're going to hit submit, and you'll get back a confirmation that your FAFSA was submitted. Right now, it's probably pretty quick. Within the next day or two, you're actually going to get back an email. So you need to keep checking your email saying your FAFSA was processed. So not only submitted, but it was processed. And now here's your EFC number, your estimated family contribution. There's also a report called a SAR, S-A-R, and students can look that up. And that gives you a little more information than just your EFC. So if you look down at the bottom of this, it will let you know what schools kind of in the middle. It'll let you know what schools it's being sent to. And again, your student will list those schools. And let's say 2 months from now, they change their mind. They can easily go in, change schools, and it will electronically go to that school. The estimated family contribution will be down there as well. It'll be, again, anywhere from 0 to, could be an exceptionally high number. The last sentence, says it's not how much aid you will receive or how much you have to pay for college, but it's kind of a starting point that the schools are going to use. For this student, based on their criteria, and this is what you really want to be able to see as well down in the corner, a Pell Grant, again, is grant money that does not have to be paid back based on parents' income, and could be up to $5,800. It also may put in your student is eligible for loans. And we can talk to you again a little bit more about specific loans and what's a good loan to take or not to take, depending upon when the interest starts. The biggest thing I always let parents know is don't have your student take out loans unless they absolutely need to, and take out the minimum amount that will get them through college. Sometimes students may take out a great deal of money in loans to pay for college, and then in May they end up with $4,000 or $5,000 in scholarships, and maybe they didn't really need to take out all that money. So just kind of a good rule of thumb is be careful about the amount that you're borrowing, because eventually your student, which hopefully doesn't mean you, will have to pay that back. So, okay, any questions so far? Okay. Okay, the next, I'll go kind of quickly over this. The next piece that we want to talk about are scholarships. So scholarships, that's money that your student's going to apply for. They do not have to pay back. And that can be based on a lot of different sources. So academic merit is their GPA and their grades and how rigorous their course load is that they're working on right now in high school. So that would be academic merit. Need-based is based on parents' finances and what you've reported on your FAFSA. So there will be some scholarships that as students fill out, it will ask for an EFC. So parents may say, gosh, that's really complicated. I don't really want to fill out the FAFSA. Do I have to? Just know that if you don't, it won't necessarily disqualify you for scholarships, but it won't give them a very good picture of what your EFC is going to be. Scholarships are also based on talent, extracurricular activities. I think sometimes parents forget to ask at their workplace. So wherever you work, sometimes there are scholarships available. You just may not know that. So I always encourage parents to check in with their organizations, their employers. Most of the banks around here do have scholarships. So Northwest Community Credit Union, Selco, Wells Fargo, there's quite a few that do have scholarships available. They also are based on students' circumstances, diversity. There's a wide range. So once in a while, students will look at scholarships and say, oh, I'm just kind of your average student. You know, I have average grades, I have average participation, but there is always something we can find for students to apply to. They just need to spend a little time searching. And Lacey, did you want to show the list of scholarships just so parents can see where those are at? Lacey has done an excellent job. We are really fortunate to have her. She's done an excellent job of putting all of our scholarships on one page for you to look at.
Well, I started with your list, Vicki. Don't sell yourself short.
You go ahead and walk them through.
Okay. So on the main Cottage Grove High School page, if you click on departments, college and career counseling, this is kind of where you'll find all of the information that we reference, and your student will also be able to find a lot of this in their senior seminar Google Classroom as well. But over here, these tabs on the right, click financial aid and scholarships, and there's all sorts of information here, a lot of which we're going over tonight. But down here under other scholarship opportunities, the full list of external scholarships is here. And it's just, I jokingly call it the terrifyingly long list of scholarships. When you look at this master list, it certainly is a little overwhelming, but it is organized by deadline. So it's easier for students to look at today's date and say, oh, today's the 28th of October, let's take a look at what's due next month. And they can just sort through on a month-to-month basis, and that makes it a little more accessible. I also have been working on tabs down here at the bottom. So if students want to look at a specific kind of type of scholarship, if they want to look at identity-based scholarships, if they wanted to look at program-specific scholarships, local ones, they can search through these tabs down here as well. And this list is also easily accessible from their Google Classroom.
Thank you, Lacey. So I know that looks like a huge list, but if your student will just take it 1 month at a time, I think it's really important to just look right now at those scholarships that are coming out in November and start applying. And I always tell students, and we can go on to the next slide. I always tell students, think of it as an assembly line. They probably may not know what that is anymore since we don't have a lot of those, but if on their desktop, they have a copy of their transcript, a PDF copy that I can send them, they have a resume or a list of activities, and they have maybe a few personal statements that they have written out, they can then just pull up any scholarship, and they all ask for basically the same information, and they just pull it off their desktop, make sure everything's correct, submit it, go on to the next scholarship. So it really is getting students to just do 1 or 2 scholarships, just kind of get started, and then the process gets easier and easier. Finding scholarships, definitely if they already know what school they're going to, right away get on the financial aid page of that school, look under scholarships, make sure they're applying for the scholarships at that particular college or university. Our website, again, your workplace, OSAC, we are going to go over all of that in the next month or so with your students. So we'll get them caught up on OSAC, wherever they can find them. If students get too overwhelmed, we just have to narrow it for them and just get them started on 1 or 2. One of the reasons I want them to start now is that in January, we'll start on the local scholarships. Cottage Grove High School last year, just for the high school, gave $200,000 just for our high school. And so that's a huge amount of money for the number of kids that apply. This year, I just found out yesterday, that amount is going up to $240,000. So if your student is already in the habit of applying for a couple scholarships at a time, when we get into January and we talk about the local ones, it'll be easy for them and they can just roll right through that process. Okay, Lacey, I think I have one more and then I think I'm done. So again, almost all of the applications are online. There are a few that are local scholarships that will be paper copies, and those will be available online as well. but they won't be submitted necessarily online. I'll help the students with that when we get a little closer. Definitely, we want them to not use their school email account for scholarships. It's really important they keep their personal one that they're using for college and scholarships. Parents, just so you know, on June 14th, right after graduation, our system closes out all of our students' South Lane School email accounts because they're no longer a student. So we really want them using their personal ones for anything that they're going to use after high school, especially financial aid, college, scholarship, things like that. Definitely keep track of due dates. Again, if they have their transcripts, different things on their desktop, it goes really quick. And I always tell kids it's like playing the lottery. If you never play, you're not going to win. But if you start submitting these scholarship applications, you really have a greater chance of getting some money. And it's really to help parents out. It's to help parents out and offset some of that cost since you don't have to pay back scholarships. Okay, I know that was a lot of information. Any questions? And you can always hold off till the end and ask individual or put them in the chat. Okay, Mr. Basting is gonna take over from here.
All right, so I am starting with Oregon Promise. So some of you may have heard of this, and the Oregon Promise is for any student who is going to a community college or even thinking about it, and we actually recommend that all students fill out the Oregon Promise just in case. So if you apply to, let's say, Stanford, and for some reason the plans fall through, you have the Oregon Promise to go back to. And what it does is it covers almost all of the tuition for 2 years at a community college, any community college in Oregon. And as you see here, the range, there is a range of money, and it does depend on, it can depend on your EFC. This year I haven't heard yet whether or not they're considering that yet, but you can get up to the full amount of $3,500 per year for tuition, which is almost 100% of the tuition costs at community college in Oregon. There is a deadline to apply, which is June 1st. Once you apply, you do have to enroll in school within 6 months. So it's pretty much you have to attend fall term at the community college that you're applying to. Some of the requirements are that you obviously graduate, you enroll at least half-time, that you've lived in Oregon for at least a year, and you have a 2.5 GPA or higher. So those are the minimum requirements. And if you do, if you are eligible for grants, they will take that money first and then supplement it with the Oregon Promise. Okay, next one. And there are some schools, so we picked a few here. For example, University of Oregon, Oregon State University, Portland State, and Western Oregon. They all have a program that will also cover your tuition. So these schools, there are some minimum requirements as well. Again, Oregon resident, it's for first-time freshmen, and most of these, you do have to have a minimum of a 3.4 GPA. You do have to fill out the FAFSA, and this one is dependent on if you qualify for Pell Grants on the FAFSA. So if you do qualify for Pell Grants, you've applied to, let's say, University of Oregon, and you have a 3.5 GPA, there's no other application needed. You will automatically be considered for this scholarship, which is a pretty awesome, because I mean, tuition at these schools are all about between $10,000 and $11,000 for the year. So that's a big chunk of change that you can get just for making these minimum qualifications. Okay, so a few tips for students, and some of these will kind of carry over to parents as well. If possible, start saving money now. And this is actually a really good time because I know a lot of students have gone out and got jobs. With the COVID and not being in school, maybe 100% of the time, you have more time to work. And I know it's tempting to go buy a new car or AirPods, but take a little bit of that money, put it into some sort of savings account if you can. And if you notice on the next line, it says an IDA or money match. They do have these accounts that if you qualify for it, which there is an application, there are some requirements based on your parents' income. If you put money into these accounts, they will match your money. So you're making double into these accounts. And you can do this throughout college. So these are really handy if you have a little bit of extra money that you can put into one of these accounts. And like they already said, definitely do a lot of research and apply for scholarships. There's a lot of scholarships out there to apply for, and there's a lot that actually go unclaimed because people don't apply for them. So please apply for it, even if you think it's a very slim chance that you'll get it. You won't know unless you try. Also, talk to your parents about a financial plan, and we'll talk about this on the next slide with parents as well. We already talked about filing your FAFSA, and then I'll just reiterate what Miss Evans said about meeting your deadlines. So Miss Evans and Miss Guest, they'll give you reminders to apply for certain scholarships, they'll tell you about certain deadlines, but it is your job to make sure you're actually doing it. So I would recommend putting it in your phone calendar. Give yourself a reminder, do these things because you don't want to miss any deadlines. All right, next slide. So for parents, and again, this is for students, so talk about your financial plan. So how much money as parents can you contribute to your students' schooling, if any? Sometimes you're not able to, but it's good for them to know what they can expect. And again, encourage them to apply for scholarships. Hopefully you won't be applying for them or doing their essays, but really encourage them to do those. It's amazing to watch at the scholarship night for Cottage Grove how much money is given to the students just in Cottage Grove. And so we want everyone to be able to participate in that. Again, do the FAFSA. And then if anything changes in your financial situation, talk to the financial aid office at the school you're applying to. A lot of times they may be able to help you out with certain things and find more money for you possibly, or just adjust things. They're really willing to work with you. Okay, last slide, I believe. So for the FAFSA and scholarships, this is one that I think a lot of people don't realize. Every year you have to reapply for the FAFSA. So if you apply this year, don't expect that it just carries through for your next 4 years or 3 years. You have to reapply every year. And like Ms. Evans said, keep your FSA ID, all those things in a safe place. Make sure you're using the same email address when you're applying for all of these scholarships and your FAFSA. Even if you change your email address on your FAFSA, it'll throw a red flag. Keep a copy of your transcript, all of those on your Google Drive. So that way, if you're out and about and someone calls you and said, hey, we're missing your transcript, we're missing this essay, you can submit it from just about anywhere if you've got it on your Google Drive. And then keep your resume updated as you go along, as you get another job, or if you're freshman in college and you do something that was significant, update your resume as you go. And then, like it says at the bottom, if you have any name change, make sure you do that as soon as possible. And I think that is it for me.
So one of the things that we are going to do the 2 weeks in November, and we've done this before, we just have to be a little more careful doing it this year. In the past, we've always had a workshop where parents could come in, use our computers. We usually provide dinner, and it's just a space for parents and students to fill out their FAFSA. And oftentimes we'll have somebody from U of O or LCC here to help to answer those really hard questions. We still would like to do that this year. It's just going to look a little bit different. if you're comfortable, parents can bring their Chromebook, and we'll be in the cafeteria, very socially distant from each other. Everybody wears masks, although we will provide boxed dinners and help parents. Sometimes you just need a spot to sit down and do this and get a little extra help along the way. So if you are having trouble with your FSA ID, there's somebody there to walk you through it, because this can get a little frustrating, and we'd rather have you ask us for that help than like just shut your computer and say, okay, I'll try it later. That way we can get this done in November, kind of get you going and done before the holidays, especially for those students that are already working on their school applications. They know where they want to go. It would be great to have this all done before you leave for winter break. And then if your student doesn't know yet where they want to go, we can at least get the financial aid portion done. And then when we come back, really start looking at, are they thinking LCC? Are they thinking apprenticeship programs, other schools? It's really okay to have your FAFSA done, even if you don't need it down the road, because it will open up for scholarships. And then who knows? We have kids come back in August saying, I didn't think I needed my FAFSA, but I realize now I do. I just have a few more things maybe to finish up, or can you help me? So that's kind of our timeline. We just want as many students to get that FAFSA done as soon as possible before the beginning of next year. Okay, what did I forget? Anything? Rex, Lacey, Mr. Harrington, anything that we, oh, can I say one more thing, Lacey, before you minimize that? So the QR code on here, you'd be surprised, but it really works. So if you take your phone and you put it on camera, if you haven't done this before, and you put it right up to that box with the black squiggly lines, that QR code, it'll immediately go to the financial aid workshop. I don't want to say portal, but that screen.
Sign up.
Sign up. Thank you. I love these QR codes because they're just so easy. You don't have to try to copy the link or do anything else. You just use your phone to do it. So it works. If you, if any of you want to try just to see, it does work. So I think that's it. We'll stick around. We always try to get finished with these nights in under an hour, so we're in good shape. Just to value, you know, we want to value your time. So we'll stick around for a while. If you have questions, we'd be happy to stay and answer any questions.